Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Speak to Transform. We are on a journey of Speak Like Jesus series. And if you've been following along, you know that I have invited you on this journey as I discover through the scriptures, through the gospels, how Jesus spoke and specifically pull out speaking tips that you can apply today, ones that I know I've been taught along the way, but ones that I never saw before because now as a speaking coach where I have been a speaking coach for over 17 years, helping people to use speaking to create their signature talk and to turn that into streams of income to be able to expand their influence, their impact, and their income. And as I go through the scriptures, I am amazed at how I see some of the things that Jesus is doing, and it really helps to bring to a practical sense because there's a lot of speakers, kingdom minded speakers, who say, well, we shouldn't be selling or we shouldn't be doing this, and that's not what I see in scriptures. In fact, today you're going to learn and you're going to see how Jesus actually sold to his audiences all the time. All the time. He was selling. He was helping them to shift from one way of thinking, one way of living to another, and inviting them in to a new way of living. And that is what we're going to look at today. So today we're going to look at part of Matthew 12. And again, I want to remind you, this is not a theological discussion. This is more of pulling out, looking at how Jesus spoke, how the audience responded, but also what Jesus did and why he did it, why he spoke the way that he did. Because I believe that God is calling you and me to be not only skilled, but also spirit filled in our approach to speaking, to be able to emanate and reflect who he is and release the full measure of his character and his presence in and through our speaking, because you have a gift that God has put you on the earth to distribute, to give, to contribute to the world. You have many gifts, and those gifts might come in the form of learnings where you have overcome areas that you are now going to pass on those nuggets of truth, those nuggets of learning that's going to help someone else along in their journey. All right, without further ado, let me just bring up this passage here just as a frame of reference as to what we are going to be looking at. And this comes from Matthew 12, start in verse 22. And in the context, what's happening here is that Jesus heals a man. It says a man who had a demon spirit that made him both blind and mute. So Jesus heals him, and it says the crowds were amazed and they kept saying, could this man be the Messiah? So this man now speaks, and he was blind and mute, so he now speaks and sees because of the miracle that Jesus did. And I want you to notice something right off the bat. The audience responded two different ways. One group said, hey, he must be the Messiah, he must be the one we've been waiting for. Another group said, that guy's got a demon, he's from Satan, he can't be. Who does he think he is? There were two big responses that were different. And I want to say that when you speak, you might have very diverse responses from your audience as well, based on what you say and who they are. And you are not to be deterred by that. Jesus was not deterred by that. In fact, he used that as an opportunity to do what he did next. In verse 25, it says, in the middle of serving his audience, it says, Jesus perceived supernaturally their thoughts and motives. So, what's another word for that? He discerned. He perceived supernaturally what they were thinking and what their motives were for saying what they were saying. So, what does he do? He doesn't ignore it. And this is something as a speaker, sometimes you may wrestle with, well, how do I be led by the Spirit and still prepare for the message and harness my skills? How do I do both? Well, here's an example of how you can do both. You can operate from the overflow of your preparation, of your learning, your skill development, and operate from that place, but also from your spiritual development, your spiritual time with the Lord. And as the Lord directs, okay, in this moment, he gave Jesus discernment. He perceived something. What did Jesus do? He actually used it as an opportunity to help overcome their objections, to confront them. The scripture says he confronted them, addressing their objections. And how did he do that? He told them a story, a parable. Now, many people struggle, many women in particular, kingdom-minded women struggle with selling when they speak. They don't want to sound awkward. They don't want to sound pitchy. They don't want to sound salesy. But in speaking, well, actually, in any area of life, selling is actually the highest form of service that you can do, because you are inviting someone to engage in something, some process, some product that is going to change their life. Something that you know and discovered and experienced that you know they need to be able to get the outcome that they want. And if you withhold that, you're actually being selfish and you are not serving them. So when Jesus confronts them, he also helps overcome their objection. Or in doing this was one of the reasons he did this. And as a speaker, you can actually do the same, both in a prepared way. If you know ahead of time what are some of the objections that your audience might have from buying into the solution that you want to offer, or in the moment perceive an objection that you can now pull from the overflow of what you already know to address that. So it says that Jesus told a story in order to confront their mindset, their motives, their objection, another word you can use. And that's when you abide in the vine, you can operate from that place of the overflow as well, filled with his spirit. Now, it is clearly written that he told them this story because he perceived supernaturally. So there was a moment that he perceived and said, okay, I'm going to tell them the story because I want to help overcome. And so you might find yourself doing that as well in speaking. And those are the times when when the Holy Spirit kind of highlights something that is necessary for that moment, for that audience. And you can skillfully do that. It might throw you off to be able to get back to where you are, but that's also a skill that you can learn how to do that. And how Jesus did this, it's actually called persuasive language, because what he did was he confronted. Let's go down here. When the Pharisees heard, go down here, Jesus supernaturally perceived their thoughts and motives. So he told them this parable. And he goes on to say, any kingdom that fights against itself, because remember, one of the other reactions was that the Pharisees were saying he casts out demons by the power of Satan. They were basically saying that he's of the devil. So he went on to show them, say this story about, well, any kingdom that fights against itself is reduced to ruin. Any family or community splintered by strife will fall apart. If Satan casts out Satan, he is making war on himself. How then could his kingdom stand? For if Satan empowers me to cast out demons, who empowers your own exorcists to cast them out? Go and ask them. So now he confronts their faulty beliefs by saying, well, you have leaders that cast out demons. What are they doing it by? So he is confronting them, and he's telling this story, the parable, to expose their faulty beliefs and to persuade them to shift the way that they think or believe. He's using a contrast as well. He's saying, if I drive out demons by Satan, then empowered by Satan, or if I drive out demons empowered by the Spirit of God, and he tells the result. If I'm doing it because I'm empowered by darkness, then this is the result. If I do it because I'm empowered by this, then this is the result. So he's using contrast as part of that persuasive language to shift their thinking. Now, here's what he does as well. He also invites them to align with his way of thinking, to align with him, to come into allegiance with him, be empowered by him. He says, join me, because if you're not on my side, you're against me. He uses that whole thing to point a picture and then to invite them to join him. Let me show you this. Right here, after he goes through his persuasive language, sharing this story, who would dare enter a house? Right here, verse 30. So join with me. If you're not on my side, you are against me. And he then talks about, so here's another speaking tip. So we talked about contrast, we talked about persuasive language. Here's another one, invitation, call to action, join me if you're not on my side. But this is where he says, if you refuse to help me gather the spoils, you are making things worse. He's saying, if you are not on my side, and if you are refusing to align with me, you're hindering me. You're against me. So this is another speaking tip that you can use to help people to understand the outcome of their choices. If you do this, then this will happen. If you do nothing, this may be your outcome. If you align with a coach that is going to help you, show you the way, that help teach you how to do that more effectively, efficiently, this may be your outcome, And so there's an if then, and he's showing the contrast, the consequences of one's decisions. Jesus did this a lot, actually. And as a speaker, it's important for you to paint that picture of possibility, but also to help people to see what they can expect if they do nothing or if they choose a different way. And that is really important. So the point that Jesus made is, this is a war with no neutrality, meaning you can't just stay in the middle. You can't just be neutral. You have to make a choice. Let me just show you that again. And this is a great principle, actually, for any decision making that you make or people that you are speaking to. There's no neutrality. If you refuse to help me gather the spoils, you're actually against me. There's no in between. There's no in between. And so it is with people who you are speaking to. Maybe they think, oh, I'll just do this. There's no in between. You have to make a decision. So it's really important for you to give them a clear call to action, a very clear but strong call to action. In fact, this is one of the skills that many event organizers look for in speakers to bring onto stages that are very influential stages. They want someone who has a skill of being able to capture audience attention, has a clear message, but also is able to give a clear, strong call to action. Because this is really important, and you might want to write this down. There can be no transformation without an invitation. There can be no transformation without an activation, inviting people to take action, to implement something that you're learning. If people just get information, they will not be changed. You have to implement it, and you have to take action on whatever you're learning. So you as a speaker, again, the highest form of service is to show them what's possible and to invite them into that process in order to engage in that and to get the outcome. So this is beautiful. Again, we see Jesus doing this. And I want to say, in this, he is selling them on why it is a good idea to align with him and do it his way. And he goes on to talk about in verse 31, this is why I warn you, be careful who you align with, for there are consequences to your alignment. I'm not going to go on to the next one because it's a whole other section. But in this section, I wanted to show you how Jesus used persuasive language, how we brought out the importance of contrast in helping people to understand, if you do this, then this is going to be a consequence. If you do this, this is going to be consequences. And the whole teaching on this is who you align with. So who you align with matters. If you are empowered and aligned with people who are of this mindset, this worldview, then it is going to impact you, and this is going to be the outcome. But if you're aligned with people of this mindset and this worldview, empowered by this spirit, then this is going to be the outcome. So he, again, is helping them to understand in persuasive language that who you associate with, who you align with matters in order to live the life that God has called you to. And then he invited them, align with me. And as a speaker, if you are able to help your audience members get a transformation even beyond the stage, whether you have a program, a product, a service, you're a coach, a consultant, whatever it is, then it is actually in doing the best service possible to invite your audience to engage with you at that level and invite them to partake of that product, of that program, to invite them to hire you as their coach, as their consultant, so that they can get the result that they want and that you can help them get. So let me know down below, what's your biggest takeaway from this? And go ahead and read this section of Matthew 12 and find out for yourself in other translations and see the things that I talked about here today, the speaking tips, and how you might apply them to your opportunities when you speak and come in front of the audiences that God has ordained for you to influence. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time as we continue this journey, this series of speaking like Jesus. As you're listening today, you may have felt prompted to say, I want to become a much better speaker. I want to be able to speak with confidence, clarity, and transformational impact. I want to invite you to check out the link in the comments below, wherever you're listening to this. Your voice is an instrument of transformation and needs to be heard, so let it be heard.